Could Maryland football take a step back next year?
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, video content creator for 247 Sports and Inside MarylandSports.com, and host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Game off. We got to talk more about Monopoly Go. The fast-paced game lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. So download Monopoly Go, now free on the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. Game on. In my opinion, and I don't want to say this, but I think Maryland football takes a step back next year. I've been thinking about it a lot. I've been thinking about what Coach Locksley has built. I've been thinking about a program, and I can't help but say I think that this program takes a step back next year. I think that we've been in a really good spot. I think we've built it up to a place where I like where the Maryland football program is at. I think it's in a good spot. I think Coach Locksley has really rebuilt this thing and has done a really good job. But this is the first year where I'm like, I don't know if this Maryland team, how good we can be, and if we have the same type of ceiling that we had last year, and even if we have the same type of floor. I don't know if we have the same ceiling or the same floor. I might argue we might have a lower floor, a lower floor, but also a lower ceiling too. And that's not the best place to be overall for Maryland football. I get to this point to kind of think of, when I've been thinking about things, I've been like, we've kind of hit that spot where it's like, there's a lot of new pieces in the starting lineup. There's a lot of new holes to fill. And it's like, it hasn't been like this for a couple of years where I've been like, that's a completely new unit. That's a completely new unit. That's pretty much a new unit. Like, it hasn't happened like that. Like last year, I thought it might have been Coach Locksley's best team yet because there was a bunch of people back. There's a bunch of players back. Even the year before that, there's a lot of type of guys back. And this year, I just don't feel that we have the same type of roster that we've had in terms of having the experience and having proven guys. That being said, there can be guys that can go out and completely prove me wrong and say, Tre doesn't know what he's talking about, and this team is going to keep improving. And a big thing in college football is, has Coach Locksley reached the level of recruiting where it's like you kind of, instead of you reload, to be honest. You lose guys to graduation, you lose a couple guys to the NFL, whatever it is. Has he reached a point where we say he's recruited well enough that it's like, okay, out with the old, in with the new? It's a reloaded type of guys. And instead of having to rebuild it, that's the difference. There's a difference between rebuilding and you just reloading. I don't know if Coach Locksley has reached that level of recruiting of just being able to just reload instead of having to rebuild. Because the difference is rebuilding, might take a couple of years, and we might have to it might be more of a next year thing where we get a bunch of young players playing and we just aren't quite ready to be there yet. And the young players are good, talented players, but they're not ready to be high-level starters. And then you're just not ready in spots to compete, and you have to really wait another year in terms of allowing your younger guys, like I said, to get up to another level, to allow your roster to kind of just get to a spot where it's at a better place. And sometimes you just have a rebuilding year. But the best teams in college football, those teams reload. And I don't know if I've seen enough with this roster to say that we just reloaded. I like where the roster is at. I like it, and I like where the program's at. But I'm not sure I can say that we are a team that reloads yet. And college football is weird because there's kind of certain levels to it. Like the Bamas and the Georgias, those are like the definition of they're just going to reload every single year. Ohio State as well. And you think of those type of programs. Oregon is now in the Big Ten. If you want to think of the Big Ten programs, those teams just reload. with recruiting because they bang out top 5, top 10 recruiting classes every year. So they're continuously having players that are coming up that they've developed that are really good players. They just haven't gotten to see the field yet. And then they also reload in the transfer portal. But I don't know if I'm confident enough with what we have brought in, specifically at the quarterback position. If you want to name a specific position, there's other positions as well, but specifically at the quarterback position, I don't know if we have done enough to say that we're going to take a step up. It might take MJ Morse a year in this system to get used to it, to get ready, but then it's like, do we have a year? Because we lose a bunch of other players this year as well. We're going to lose 2 of our best receivers in Caden Prather, and we're going to lose Ty Felton this year, and then Roman Hemby could possibly be gone. Dante Trader could be gone, and it could be a whole new look Maryland football next year. And that's why it's like, are we a team that's reloading? Are we a team that's rebuilding? I don't know yet. I don't know also if it was mainly Talia that contributed to the success, or was it mainly Coach Loxley? And that's what we're going to see. Is MJ Morse ready to be the quarterback? Because I don't know. And some of you guys might say, how do we even know he's the quarterback? I'm pretty positive that MJ Morse is the quarterback going into next season. I'm pretty sure that he is going to be our guy. And so I look at the roster and I say, quarterback position, we have a new starter, a guy that hasn't been in this offense because we didn't love the guys that we brought up in terms of Billy Edwards and Cameron Edge. You don't bring in MJ Morris if you love Billy Edwards or you love Cameron Edge. You just don't. And so I'm saying at the quarterback position, I don't know how we look. And then you cannot ignore the offensive line at all. We bring in 5 new starters on the offensive line. Everyone basically is in the NFL trying to get in a camp, or in Delmar Glaze's situation, actually got drafted. Congratulations to Delmar Glaze, went to the Raiders in the 3rd round. A really solid spot for a guy like Delmar Glaze to go. And I was happy that he went that early, but we completely, like, are we reloading on the offensive line? You know my point. Like, are we reloading or are we rebuilding? Is that a unit that's going to take maybe a year or 2 to get some experience, or is it going to be ready with some of the transfers that we brought in? I don't know yet. And so that's part of why I think there's a huge shot that we take a step back. And then also in the secondary, having an inexperienced secondary can be sketch. It can be really sketch in college football sometimes, in any level of football, just with the amount of throwing and the progression and throwing the football and the passing concepts that have kind of came out in the last couple of years. There's just been more. I feel like there's been more flow in offenses in terms of the passing game, and we're moving towards a football where it's about the quarterbacks. And of course that's what it's been for a while now, but it's really about quarterbacks. It's about the receivers, and it's really hard to guard these guys. You see so many of these receivers being top end picks. Think of Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze in college football, that it's becoming an offensive league. And if you don't have corners that can cover, and I don't know if our guys can. Perry Fisher is inexperienced at the position, and he's supposed to be a starter out there. And we lose Tarheeb Still, who went 5th round in the NFL draft. Then we lose Jaquan Shepard, who's in the Raiders camp. And then you lose your slot, Glendon Miller, to safety. And so it's completely through 3 new starters in the secondary. It's like, do we rebuild it? Did we reload it? I don't know yet. And we're going to see if we have the guys that Coach Loxley's recruited from the portal and from high school, are those guys ready to step up? And right now, I can't say they are. I'll say this: the quarterback room has gotten a lot of good reports. They played pretty well in the spring game, but I don't know when it comes to game situation. We're playing Oregon on the road or whatever, and it's like a huge game. It's an insane atmosphere. Are we going to be able to say that these guys are ready to go? I don't know. Or if we're playing USC, they pass the ball over the place. Is the cornerback room going to be reloaded, or it's going to be rebuilt? Because if we're still having to rebuild it, if we're going to have to get different guys experience going into next year, then it's a rebuilding year. And that's what I think the program is. And not many programs are reloading programs that reload every year. Not many programs in college football are like that. So you got to ask the question, are we going to be ready to go in terms of our offensive line, and that might be the most important part of it outside the quarterback position. It's really hard to get going on your offense when you don't have an offensive line that's completely new. And we had some of that troubles last year, but it could be exemplified this year. I don't know yet. And that's a big part of why I think we could take a step back. The 5 new offensive line starters, as well as the new quarterback, that doesn't mesh well. And that's a big part why I think that we could take a step back from what we were of being a Music City Bowl win type of team against an SEC team in Auburn and getting to that 8-win mark. I don't know if we are there as a program to say that we're going to keep progressing. I would guess that we take a step back. I don't know if we're going to be viewed as the same way. There's a point last season where we were basically in the top 25 in college football. I think we were like the 26th team ranked. We should have been ranked in the top 25. It was pretty bad, but I don't know if we're going to ever get to that spot again. And I don't know if the schedule will allow us to. I do think the schedule is a little bit easier, but I think that this could be a potential rebuilding year. We could see some disappointing losses, and a lot of it's going to depend on that quarterback play, that offensive line play, and that cornerback room, and then also finding depth in other places. There's other new starters along the team in terms of we lose Jayshon Barham in the linebacker room. He was a playmaker for us. And then you think about we also lose Jason Jones in the slot. He was a big-time player for us. So there's so many different question marks, and I can't say we had the same amount. There's definitely question marks, don't get me wrong, last year. But the question marks were it was really on the offense. It was, okay, the offensive line, and yeah, that's a big part of it, but it ended up coming together okay. And then on the defense, I was pretty confident in our secondary. And then the linebacker room looks pretty good, and the defensive line was like, we brought in some transfers, and it definitely was. But besides the defensive line, and the offensive line, it was a pretty solid group that you felt like you brought most people back. And so I'm not sure we have that same type of team this year, but we're going to see overall. Let's talk about no Maryland football players entering the portal. We're one of the only schools to be able to do this. I will talk about that after this ad from LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn Job helps hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get qualified candidates within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have time or the resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make their process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So Maryland football hasn't had anybody hit the portal yet, and that is quite rare that nobody entered the portal for Maryland football, but it's also kind of weird. Let me explain. I want to focus on the quarterback position when I'm talking about this. It is weird that nobody has entered the portal. That means that I think that all three think they have a shot to win this quarterback battle. Or, I mean, you could look at it in other ways and say, okay, like they all just want to compete. They all like being part of the Maryland program, and transferring somewhere else isn't for everyone. But I take it as they all think that they can win this quarterback battle. And that's an interesting spot to be because I'm pretty convinced it's going to be MJ Morris. And I know a lot of you guys are like, it's the spring game and whatnot, and you can't name him the starter after the spring game. But just based on the signs and how things look and just kind of the feel you get from things, I'm pretty confident that MJ Morris is the starter for Maryland football. But I could be wrong. And it seems like that the fact that Billy Edwards didn't transfer, nor did Cameron Edge, it feels as if they each think they have a shot at winning that quarterback battle. And I don't hate that at I like that, honestly, for us. And if we can keep Billy and Cameron edge for next year, then that's going to help this team a lot, because who knows what could happen with MJ Moore. So I was thinking about this year. This year could be a potential, like, if someone's not playing well, you're on a short leash. Like, if Talia didn't play well a couple of games, he was going to be the starter next game. It didn't matter. But if someone doesn't play well this year, another guy might get an opportunity. If we slip a couple of games in a row, maybe in the middle of our schedule, and games we shouldn't be slipping and teams that we shouldn't be losing to, like, I'm thinking about our schedule overall. I don't have it down to a T, but I just pulled it up, and I'm thinking, like, early on the season, okay, we're going to beat UConn in the first game, but we play Michigan State second week in the college football season, and then we play Virginia. If for some reason MJ Morris or whoever the starter is drops a couple of bad games to Michigan State and Virginia, two teams that are, like, I don't want to say, like, we're a different team this year. I don't know if it's like, oh, we're just going to walk in there and it feels like we should win. I can't say that's true, especially against Michigan State and even Virginia. Virginia should be better this year. And so I'm thinking, like, if MJ Morris or whoever the starter is not playing well, they could easily get pulled, and we could have a new starter for the next game against Villanova and then headed into the Indiana game after that. I think that's entirely possible, and that's maybe part of why nobody in that quarterback room transferred, is because they feel as if that anybody could get an opportunity next year. And that is definitely, I don't think, a crazy take to have. I think there's definitely a shot if you look at how these things usually go, whether it's injury, whether it's someone not playing well, whatever it is, you usually get an opportunity at some point, and it might be a small opportunity. It might be a couple of snaps, but usually you get an opportunity sometime in the season where you get an opportunity to play. And that doesn't happen all the time. Quarterback could be perfectly healthy and could play well the entire season, but they must think that at some point they're going to get an opportunity, or they think that they can still win the job. And that's kind of how my take is at it, because I don't think that these guys are guys that are just like career backups in college football. They might not be Power 5 type starters. I don't know if Billy Edwards is a Power 5 type starter. Cameron Edge is still pretty young in terms of his eligibility, but they might be guys. They're definitely guys that can go somewhere and play, I'm thinking. So it's kind of interesting that nobody transferred in that quarterback room, but it's also just interesting that nobody transferred overall. I thought for sure that the spring wasn't going to go the way that a couple of people wanted, and some people were going to decide to leave. It's kind of crazy to think, like, before we know it, we're going to be talking about next football season. It's summer for a lot of colleges starting about now at this time. And so they're going to be back getting ready for the fall season soon. And I think it speaks to our culture and what Coach Loxley has built, that we had not a single player in the portal. I think that's a pretty cool thing that nobody wanted to enter. And I know there's guys that probably think I don't know exactly how they do it. I'm assuming they have a depth chart, but there's probably guys that think they should be higher on the depth chart, but they probably like being part of the Maryland football program. And I honestly like that nobody entered the portal. It's a pretty cool spot to be in. It also makes us not have to, like, go find other spots for depth. And I like where the program's at in terms of culture, in terms of the culture of the team, because there's definitely many guys at different positions that could have entered the portal. So it's a really cool thing that nobody entered the portal for Maryland football. But it'll be interesting to see if we decide to pick anybody up from the portal, but that will be interesting. Let's get into Chaz Lanier. That could bring Maryland over the top. I will tell you about that after this ad from Monopoly Go. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that. There's so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with a friend to complete albums for big prizes. Cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. Hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot Pikachu machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win, or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now, free on the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. Game on. Maryland basketball, landing Chaz Lanier. I've talked about him the other day, but landing Chaz Lanier could legit put this team over the top. I'm unsure what's going to happen with this Chaz situation. I think he has to be the number one guy that we want. I saw that he's ranked the 25th transfer in the portal, and that includes guys that are committed as well. So he's ranked as the 25th best player in the transfer portal, and that's definitely a pretty good player. But he might be even better than that. Last year, just to give you guys a quick refresher, if you guys didn't listen to it the first time, he averaged 19.7 points per game, so basically 20 points per game. He only averaged 1.8 assists, but shot 44% from three-point arc, 51% from the field, and 88% from the free throw line. So he's almost a 40, 50, 90 kid if his free throw percentage goes up a little bit. And I think this Chaz Lanier kid is exactly what we need to take this team from, we look like a borderline top 25 team, a team that should be a March Madness team next year, to, whoa, is this team a top 15, top 10 team in the country? I think if we land Chaz, I think there's definitely a shot at looking at a roster and saying that's a top 15 type of team in college basketball, which will be crazy after the disappointing year that we had last year. Coming back and being a top 25 team in the country after looking like trash last year and having one of our worst years as a program in a while, and it being like a lot of people questioning, is Kevin Willard the guy? What went wrong? Why couldn't we make this roster work? Why was there so many holes? Why couldn't we shoot the ball? And then we come back and we're like, this team is stacked. This team looks like it could be the truth. And adding Chaz Lanier to this team could do that. I think then you just have a balance on your team, and you have depth as well. And I think you're just looking at the team, and it looks really strong on paper. And apparently Chaz is friends with Jacoby Gillespie, so they could want to play together in the Big Ten. And I think that could be a pretty cool thing for Maryland basketball. If that's our backcourt next year, Chaz and Jacoby Gillespie back there, there's not much else you can ask for. And then the thing about it is, somebody is going to get a lesser role. That is definitely going to be a thing next year for Maryland basketball. I don't know who it will be. It could be Deshaun Harris-Smith. I'm really high on Rodney Rice. Maybe it could be him. Maybe it could be Selton McWell. Maybe even it's Jacoby or Chaz if Chaz decides to come. But there's so many good players that I'm looking at it and I'm saying somebody's not going to quite live up to what they want to be. But at the same time, it's like you kind of have to recruit and build in this type of roster that is just it looks pretty strong on paper for you to feel better about yourself going into next year. But I think we would be considered, I think we already have potentially the best front court in possibly the country. Like, it's a top 10 front court in the country with Derek Queen and Julian Reeves. I don't know who you would say is better than that. And then if you add Chaz Lanier, Chaz Lanier, Jacoby Gillespie, those are two of the top guards in the portal. Two guys that a lot of schools wanted. And Chaz is supposed to take his time with his commitment, and it might take a little bit for anything to really come out on it. But I do know that Maryland wants this kid, and there's a couple other players that Maryland is looking at and talking to, but I think they're holding out for Chaz. I think they want Chaz, and I think they want Chaz to be part of the program, and so it'll be interesting. But I do think that Chaz puts us over the top. I do think that we're a top team in the Big Ten, maybe the best team in the Big Ten next year if Chaz comes back, and maybe even a top 10 team in the country. I don't know if we'll get the respect, but if Kevin Willard can put it together the right way, make sure the pieces mesh, then it could really be nice just adding another scorer and having another guy that can score the ball after last year being such a struggle. And it's hard to replace Jameer Young, but replacing him with two guys is easier than replacing it with one. That's what I realized about replacing Jameer Young. You definitely want to replace him with two different guys instead of just one, because he's such a good player, and I don't think anybody will be able to replace what he does, but I think you want way more balance on this roster in terms of top to the bottom, and I love where we're at overall. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football, football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked On Terps.